Hello and welcome to my themed TBR stack. So I love to theme my TBR stacks, and by that I mean find a niche of books that all have the same general topic but come at it from different angles and different sides. And so for this spring I have decided to focus on books surrounding the idea of bookshop / library. So when I start feeling inspired and really have a hankering to do a themed reading, the first thing I do is to record it in my reading journal and start a collection of titles that would fall under that theme. I try really hard to have a big variety too, so running the gamut between kids' books to adult books. This often means research and watching other booktubers to find out what is out there that would fit into my theme, but that I would be interested in reading and would enjoy. When deciding to do a themed TBR, the first thing that I do is I check on my library's catalog to find out what is available, what do they have, what am I able to access, and then I put those on reserve. It usually takes about a week for all of them to fully come in from all over the county, and then I can go and pick them up. I also will put things on reserve for Libby, which is the app that we use in our library system to put audiobooks on reserve. Sometimes Libby has a long-ish wait, and so I do try to time everything to come together at the same time. In the interim, I then also will search on SCRIBD and Audible to figure out what I'm able to access there, whether it's an audiobook. Sometimes I like to get the hard copy from the library, but maybe be able to access the audiobook just in case. I don't like to sleep on picture books. I know sometimes there's this general idea that picture books are only for kids, and they are, usually. But there's also interesting back matter that's included in the back of picture books, historical picture books. And so this one is called Sylvia's Bookshop, and it has Shakespeare and Company down over the bookshop, so you know that it's Sylvia Beach, who opened Shakespeare and Company in Paris. This is written by Robert Burleigh and illustrated by Katie Wu. This is called Library on Wheels, Mary Lemus Titcomb and America's First Bookmobile, and this is by Charlie Glenn. This comes with photographs and first-hand accounts, and it's really just lovely. It has so much information, lots of text, and even the back matter is impressive. They have notes for all the various pages in the book, and it's just incredible. I also grabbed 2 middle grade books. The first one is The Bookshop Girl. This is by Sylvia Bishop, illustrated by Polly Bernatine. The premise of this is that there is a competition to own the Great Montgomery Book Emporium. And yet I think when the winner finally takes control of the Great Montgomery Book Emporium, they realize that there are a lot of challenges. It says this is a love letter to books and the people who read them. A whimsical delight. The Girl Who Could Not Dream by Sarah Beth Durst. So this is about a girl whose family runs a bookshop. There is apparently space under the bookshop that she likes to go and hang out in, and it says that the bookshop's dreams are stolen and her parents go mysteriously missing, and she is going to have to unravel the truth and find her parents and save the bookshop. I also use Kindle when I can't find a book in any other method, and I wanted to read The Bookshop of Dust and Dreams, so I grabbed it off of Kindle. It is, shocker, set in World War II in a magical bookshop, which in and of itself is its own character. It sounds like there is some trauma and heartbreak due to the war, and it is about triumphing over that pain. And then I have A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus. And this is also set in World War II. And this is about the children who were sent out of London into the country. And it is about a sibling trio who end up in a situation where they are sent to live in some houses that maybe are not the best, but they do find a librarian, and I think the hope is that they do finally find a family to love them. Next is 84 Charing Cross Road. This is by Helene Hanth, and this is an epistolary novel that is between a freelance writer living in New York and a used book dealer in London. They never meet. They're geographically separated through their whole lives, but they still have a long relationship that is based on a love of books. Very thin, but I've heard rave reviews about this. Next, I have The Yellow Lighted Bookshop. This is by Louis Busby. This is a memoir that is written by a former bookseller and sales rep. And so he shares about all these different bookstores that he comes across and kind of he says, and the joy of getting lost in the deep canyons of shelves. And he goes from the great libraries in Alexandria to sharing about Shakespeare and Company, which is Sylvia Beach's bookstore in Paris. And it's just his experiences as a bookseller. So next I have The Paris Bookseller. This is by Carrie Marr. And this is the story of Sylvia Beach that I've mentioned a couple times. She created the Shakespeare and Company bookstore in Paris. Through opening this bookstore as an expatriate, she ends up coming into contact with Ernest Hemingway and James Joyce. And it is her challenges being an expatriate, challenges with being a bookstore owner, and also this is set during the Depression, and so that brings along the most challenges of all. The next one is not a bookstore, it is The Paris Library by Janet Scalesheim Charles. This is a dual timeline. Even though it's not a bookshop, I am a sucker for World War II historical fiction. And so this is a dual timeline between Paris 1939, when the Nazis marched to occupy Paris, and a woman works to try to save the library from destruction. And the second part is 1983 Montana. A girl meets her neighbor who is from Paris. And I think this girl in the 1980s unravels the story of what happens in 1939 and why this woman has ended up back in Montana. I am also reading on Libby, The Personal Librarian. This is by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. And this is the story of Belle de Costa Green, who is an African-American woman at the turn of the century in the 1900s, who becomes the director for J.P. Morgan's private library, except that he does not know that she's African American. She is passing for white. She claims to have Portuguese background, which would make her olive skin kind of understandable, and it's her story kind of maneuvering through white society and passing as white. And her father is African American. I think he can also pass for white, but he is a big proponent in the Black community for Blacks being treated as equals, and their family ends up splitting because their mother wants to pass for white and their father goes on and ends up having to have his own separate life. And I'm very excited to delve into this, to learn more about this real life extraordinary woman. I'm also interested in reading A Bookshop in Berlin, the rediscovered memoir of one woman's harrowing escape from the Nazis. This is written by Francois Frankel. This is the story of a Jewish bookseller who ends up having to escape the Nazis. It is an audiobook on SCRIBD. And then I also have The Last Bookshop in London, a novel of World War II, written by Madeline Martin. This is also an audiobook on SCRIBD, and this is inspired by the true World War II history of the last few bookshops to survive the Blitz in London in 1939. And then I found The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek in our little library store, and it was $1. So I grabbed it. This is by Kim Michelle Richardson. And it is a historical fiction, and it's inspired by the true blue-skinned people of Kentucky and the brave and dedicated Kentucky Packhorse Library Service of the 1930s. So I don't know anything about this, but it gets really great reviews, and so I am excited to read it. Next is The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. And as I searched for these, they all are so exciting to me. But listen, this is about a guy, Monsieur Perdue, who has a floating bookstore on a barge on the Seine River. And it says that while he can heal other people's broken hearts through literature suggestions, he can't heal his own. He ended up having a lover who left his life, but left a letter. He could never read the letter. He finally decides to open and read the letter, and he decides that he is going to take his barge to the south of France. And along the way, he ends up collecting kind of these mismatched, love forlorn people as well. And it says that it, again, is a love letter to books, meant for anyone who believes in the power of stories to shape people's lives. Next is The Bookshop of Yesterdays. This is by Amy Meyerson. This is the story of Miranda Brooks. Her eccentric uncle owned a bookshop, and he was always, as she was growing up, having these inventive scavenger hunts created just for her. But there was a disagreement in her family, and so she stopped being able to go and visit him. But as an adult, it turns out that she is bequeathed the bookstore and after his death, and it is Prospero Books. And she discovers when she gets there that her uncle has left her all sorts of clues, a la the scavenger hunt from her youth. And these clues are supposed to help her to be able to save this bookstore. And then lastly is Bibliophile, an illustrated miscellany by Jane Mount. And this is full of book suggestions, poetry. All throughout the whole book there are beloved bookstore recommendations, writer-owned bookstores. And so I'm just excited to slowly peruse through this and look at the illustrations and end up blowing up my TBR list. I also like to search and see what movies are out there that also fall into that general theme so that I can really get a full immersive experience in that theme.
You can't run this place by yourself, and no one in this village will help you.
You don't really look old enough, or strong enough.
You look old, but you don't look strong.
Dear madam, no one has plucked up courage enough to sell books in this forsaken coin of the world.
My first customer. He so jealously guards his privacy after the tragic death of his beloved wife.
So here is my themed TBR list for bookshops. And if you have any suggestions, any books that you have read or even movies that you've read about bookshops, please leave it in the comments below. I would really appreciate to hear some of the things that you have enjoyed in this theme. Until next time.